welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and we're having a lot of fun understanding the dialectic and understanding why we love to understand the dialectic, why it's so important, why it kicks so much ass, and why, what are all of the ways we benefit from this fun game of figuring out and understanding the dialectic. And then we clap. So, on that note, we're going to jump into the text where we are in the Phaedo, where Socrates has outlined his dialectic. Was questioned by his friends. Hey, that sounds right, but what about the soul? I don't think it's immortal. Maybe. Can you give me some arguments to change my mind? So we want to know how well Socrates changes their mind. What does he do to change their mind? And so we can learn that process. So we can change our own minds in the best possible way. Because that's learning. That's also personal development. And if we can change our state of mind along with it, it's the spiritual development that we're here to do. And if we can change our mind in a way that can awaken something that's eternal and immortal and never loses its power, something called self-phronesis. We want to do that because that seems like the best, most rational thing we can do in this lifetime if we are going to die and we are in a journey that involves many incarnations, which was only true if the soul is immortal. So we want to learn that method of changing our mind, and we want to see if our minds can be changed too, because all that only follows if our soul is immortal. If our soul isn't, there's no reincarnation. There's no learning that can sustain past this lifetime. There's no virtue that never loses its power. There's no higher level or dimension of reality that we can reincarnate into. All of those things fall down. All of the things in Socrates' doctrine of philosophy fall down. Now, already we have some things helping us. The fact that it's Socrates, it's the big dog. It's the father of Western thought. It's the author of philosophy. It's perhaps one of the greatest, if not the greatest, human mind to walk our planet. Up there, at least. So, him saying, oh, there is another place, there is an upgrade, there's different people up there, people who have completed their lives, completed their human incarnations up there that we can talk to, have fun with. Greater people than you'll find down here. And greater gods and greater masters to find up there and to play the game in a greater way. Wow, there's this whole another level of reality. Yeah. Oh no, not just that. You can get there now. You don't have to wait until they bury you, your last death. So what's he telling us? This greatest game in town, philosophy, has the greatest benefit, has the greatest rewards, has the greatest usefulness, both in this life and in the next. It's being played on another dimension right now. There's a conversation being had, and there's a part of yourself that's there already, part of your soul that's there that we want to reawaken, or we want to turn our the eye of the soul, as we just read last time. We're not putting something into us. We're turning our eyes around, turning our whole soul around to see that. To see that place in which the better philosophy conversation, the better game is being played. Wow. But all of that falls down if the soul's not immortal. If there's no such thing as a soul out of the body. If we're just brain chemistry, if we're just neurons firing, if the idea of consciousness is just an illusion, if it can be reduced to through reductionism to just squirting chemistry and chemicals in neurons firing in a physical case, or if our soul just dissipates to the wind after we die, it all falls down. So, we don't want that to happen. We want to understand that the soul is immortal, be convinced, change our minds, and know how to change our minds by mastering the dialectic too. So on that note, let's go back into the Phaedo and see what Socrates says. to learn all those things. Yay. This is the notes on where we are so far. Socrates gave his doctrine, defined it. Simmias and Cebes said, yeah, but can you convince us the soul is immortal? Some people don't think that. So I had to give a demonstration. Gave us 3 arguments. What were they? There were that. Where's the notes for that? The lame nature argument, the straight line and circle argument, and the Enderman's argument. Where are they? Pictures. Here we go. The 3 arguments. If the world of becoming is a lesser to greater, greater to lesser, growing and decaying, and if it's a back and forth between opposites, and we can see a dying and being we can see being alive, and we can see the process of dying, then it would be, nature would be lame if it can't also do its opposite. A coming to a being dead and coming back into life. So therefore, the souls of the dead do exist. Even though we can't see it, we can see its opposites, and therefore nature would be lame if we didn't have the other half. Second argument, if it was all in a straight line, if we didn't circle back around, everyone would end up dead. Just like everyone would end up asleep if we don't also wake up. So everyone on the planet would end up asleep eventually. So to everyone, all of the souls would end up dead. Therefore, it has to be, not only is there a place where our souls are dead, it's a circular process of also coming back to life. Number 3, and that has to be there because the souls that are alive have to have come from somewhere. It can't have been from this physical world because the physical world would run out of resources. So therefore, the living come to be from the dead. And then Cebes jumped in and said, oh, by the way, I can do the dialectic too. Me. And he said, here's a little dialectic. That shows the 4th argument of why the soul is immortal. If learning is recollection, as Socrates always points out, many dialogues like that say that, like the Meno. This is from the Meno. Then, if learning is recollection, we must have necessarily learned at a previous time that which we're recollecting in our lives. Number 3, division. What's the implications if it's not true? If it shows an impossibility or contradiction, then it's a way of changing your mind to say that the theory is true. If it were not, it would be impossible. The impossibility would follow if our souls were not somewhere before she came to exist in this human form. Therefore, the soul is likely immortal. Likely, it's a hypothesis. There's a nice little 4-part display of the dialectic there, which dialectic, of course, has 4 parts. And then our friend, that was Cebes, his partner Simmias jumped in and said, yeah, I'm not familiar with this theory of learning from recollection. Can you demonstrate that which you just defined? So he used definition, demonstration, division. He used and synthesis within his definition of the argument, but the dialectic in conversation means the person has to say, yeah, I get it, or not. Can you give a demonstration? So do step 2. And CB said, oh, well, demonstration of the theory of recollection. He said, dialectic? Question mark? Oh? He said, oh, if someone can ask good questions in a good way, then he's able to draw answers from the selves of the person. So that person, therefore, must have the logos and knowledge and nous, the 2 things. Because if you've seen somebody do the dialectic well, the artful use of questions and answers, then you've seen it happen. That's kind of not going to be convincing, so Socrates jumped in and he took over. Well, okay, Saying that there is a dialectic is not the same as doing it. So let's have a look at how Socrates did it. Socrates said, okay, first of all, logos and learning as recollection. If we are recollecting, then we have known beforehand. That's the premise. That's the, you could say, the thesis or the if statement. To demonstrate that, we're seeing, hearing, and perceiving, we recognize that which is same and different, don't we? Whenever you see, hear, or perceive, you recognize something the same and something different. That proves my definition. Well, that's a kind of demonstration, but if you're familiar enough with the arguments, you might say, oh, yep, I remember now. That was enough. But if the other person says, what? Then you have to go to the next step and divide out all the arguments to show them. Simius said, what? What? He said, what? And so now we have the argument. He had to show that we recognize same and difference, and that should prove that we, when we recollect in our physical world, we're recollecting something known beforehand. So, is a human and a lyre or like a guitar different? Or maybe a harp? I was asked this before. What is a lyre? This thing. That's a lyre. Okay. Wow. So, is a lyre and a person different? Yes. So, by the way, if you see the lyre or a sweater belonging to your beloved, don't you recognize both the same thing, the lyre or the sweater, and something different? You remember, oh, that's my girlfriend. I remember her. So you recognize same and different. Even if it was you hadn't seen the girlfriend for a long time. Even if it was just a picture of your girlfriend's guitar. By the way, does that picture of what is like the lyre, the guitar, and what is unlike the guitar is unlike the beloved? So the picture of what is like and unlike, picture of the guitar is like it, it's unlike your girlfriend. Do they both fall short of the actual girlfriend herself? Okay, sure. What about self-equal? The sticks. Where do we get our knowledge of self-equal? Because you can have two equal sticks that don't appear equal to another person. Sure. They're looking at it from a different angle or whatever, or they can see clearer than me, or they don't have their glasses on. But has self-equalness itself, the being equalness itself, has that ever appeared unequal? No, of course not. The thing itself is not unequal. The appearances in sticks, sure. Therefore, equal things like sticks and the self-equal are not the same. But it is out of these equal things we perceive, although they are different from the self-equal, that you have conceived and grasped the episteme of self-equal. You look at two equal sticks and you remember equalness itself. It's in us. You never see equalness itself as a physical thing, but the physical things allow you to conceive it and grasp it. And that's called episteme, a kind of knowledge, but you're still in your physical senses. Even if the sticks were like or unlike self-equal. Therefore, keep going. Therefore, the physical world has an inner deficiency. It must be a higher, more real world. But the things in the physical world want to be like a certain real being. Whether they know it or not, sticks want to be like self-equal. People who seek goodness want to actually reach the self-good. So these are the implications that follow for us. We want self-justice. We want goodness itself. You're really attracted to beautiful things. What you're really after is the true being. Every beautiful person or thing will fall short if it's through the senses. But it can remind you. You still recognize beauty, even though you've never seen beauty itself in the physical world. But beautiful people can allow you to conceive or grasp or recognize the episteme. But we seek the real beings, but everything in the physical world is in need and cannot be such a nature, since it is inferior. The physical world is inferior by definition. To realize this, hey, just have gone through this reasoning itself. We must have somehow, somewhere, caught sight beforehand of that thing that we're using to say physical things are like. For us to even have this argument, we must have, you and me, have an idea of self-equal or self-beauty. For us to even recognize this. Isn't that cool? I think that's cool. What do you say, Owen?
Wow.
See, I have a family of Owens. Okay? So that's where we are. What next? Have we also experienced such a thing as this in regards to equal things and the self-equal, or have we not? Yes, we have experienced that. Accordingly then, it is necessary that we knew the equal beforehand prior to the time when we first saw equal things and realized that all these things on the one hand reach out to be like the equal but possess an inner deficiency. But surely we also agree that the self-realization cannot be realized in any other way than out of seeing and hearing and touching. So, in that way, all these perceptions are the same. Self-realization cannot be realized. If we are here to realize the self-actualization, not self-actualization, self-knowledge, realize the self, it cannot be realized without this. So it's a way of unifying all physical things. They are the same. Why? Because it's through them that we can realize the self. Seeing or touching or any sense perception. Very curious way he's brought a one to the many things in the physical world. So we say also. Also, the only way, no other way. So self-realization, the realization of the selfness, equality itself, beauty itself, only comes out of seeing, hearing, or touching. Seeing, hearing, touching, or some other sense, perception, so it adds a sort of a purpose to these physical things, but also unifies it. Therefore, all perceptions are the same. No. Is that perception? Or let's nail down this word here. Thus I say all these perceptions are the same. What does this word here mean? So it could be all things or all perceptions. Let's bring it up.
Pada.
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 Pada. All is, yeah, it just means all. Yeah, all things in all directions. Okay, so there's a question. Does he mean all sense perceptions are the same or all things are the same? It's all... Yeah. This translator is saying all perceptions, but let's see what other translators say. So this is... We're really so fortunate to have the internet, a 75A, such that we can skip between even different translations of the same text. So in the lobe, which is Fowler, okay, enable, you must have previous knowledge of the thing that resembles it but falls short. Well then, if this just what happened to us in regard to the equal things and equality in the abstract, not abstract, you idiot, the being certainly is, then we must have knowledge of equality. Yep. Before the time when we saw equal things and thought all these things are aiming to be like equality but fall short. Yep. We also agree that we have not gained knowledge of it and that it is impossible to gain knowledge except by sight or touch or any other senses. And I consider that senses are alike. So he's saying the senses are alike in that way. So the senses are the same. Okay, and I'm going to pull out the trifecta and look at the Rouse. Look how tatty this is. It's falling apart. Rouse and 75A. Well, we go on to agree here also. We did not and we could not get a notion of the equal by any other means than by seeing, grasping, or perceiving by some other sense. I say the same of equal and the rest. So he is saying this applies to the... Whoops. So he's saying that this is the same for all of the beings. So that's a curious way of reading it. So we've got three possible translations of this. We only self-realization The thing itself is only realized out of our physical senses. Thus, I say all our perceptions are the same in that it has a purpose for our self-realization. Or all things are the same. Sticks, beautiful people, cats and dogs, pineapples, marshmallows are all the same because it's through them that we can realize self-realization. Or as Rouse says, all of the beings are the same. Equality, beauty, and all the other ones. So thus I say all of these are the same. So we have 3 different translations, 3 different options there. But I think they all fit. I think all things have a purpose to point us home. I think our perceptions are only here to point us to our higher perception. Otherwise, what's the purpose of having senses of the body if our purpose in life is to separate from them? It's like, what? It's like, why give a kid a hand grenade if you're just to take it off him? Hey, here's a hand grenade. You don't have a hand grenade? Give me that. Here are your physical senses. Don't have those? Separate from them. Well, it must have a purpose to sort of, when we reach that level of evolution, to point out, hey, you need the senses to recognize that there is the self-being realm. The self-realization, realization of the selfhood of all of the things. Or, finally, all of the things. Whether it's beauty, goodness, justice, you start by looking at the physical things. And it awakens you. How will you know that there is a justice itself to reach if you didn't, I don't know, see a physical thing and recognize that was unfair or that was fair? How could you even begin to pursue beauty itself if you didn't recognize there is such a thing in beauty? So for all of the things, all of our perceptions, and all of the ideas, self-ideas, could be either. Let's keep reading. For it is the case that they are the same. All 3 of them, maybe. O Socrates, by reason that Logos wishes to make this clear indeed. But surely out of sense perceptions on the one hand, we necessarily realize that it is inherent in all things we perceive that they do indeed reach out to that self, which is the equal. All of the things, and that they are indeed at a loss. How should we express it? Now let's see if I should have kept the same page. Let's see if it's the same things in the rouse. Is he saying all things, even sticks, reach out to that self, which is the equal? Or all of our senses are reaching out to the equal? The rouse is usually the most helpful. 75B. Okay. Look here then, it is from the senses we must get the notion that all these things of sense aim at that which is equal and fall short. All these things of sense aim at the equal but fall short. So Rouse agrees that it's the things. Everything here is seeking self-equal. And let's get the trifecta and pull up the loeb. Loeb. Loeb, what do you think of loeb? All sensible objects strive. Again, objects. After the absolute equality and fall short. Okay. Look at a stick and smile and say, you have a noble purpose, stick. You strive for self-equal in self-being. But nay, you shall fall short, for as long as thee is a stick. Separate from thine stickness. Self by self, out of the stick body. Only then can you achieve that to which you aim. And then say that to a stick, and everyone in the park will think you're so wise. And they will throw money at you. Thumbs up. Okay. And it'll be the truth. It will sound funny, but it will be the truth. According to the Logos. Accordingly then, before we begin to see, to hear, and to perceive... Actually, let's write this down as a note now that we've got it. Therefore... all things reach out to self-equal. All things are the same in this way. In what way? In that they help us to reach self-realization. And they help us because they themselves reach out to that self. Now, what's a better expression than reach out to that self? Aim at. Okay. So aiming is different than okay, so let's see what the actual Greek is. Is it aim at? Is it reach out to? Is it desire? Let's see. Actually, let's get the strive. Is it reach out? Is it strive? Is it aim? Let's see. It is origete, which means nothing. Origete means reach out. Reach, stretch out, stretch out. Reach out, hold out. Stretch oneself. Reach, stretch out. Grasp at, yearn for. Oh, that might be better. Yearn for. Stretch out. Stretching is physical, but yearning and grasping doesn't necessarily have to be physical. So what? Well, I don't know. Reach out to, let's say reach out to or yearn. Yearn. So yearning plays into what we saw in the text earlier as wants to be. So reach out at, yearns for. What was the other? Grasps. Grasps for or wants to grasp. Self-equal. Interesting. What does that mean for our quest as a philosopher? Well, this quest to unite with being in direct contemplation that we're doing through logos and dialectic is not just our quest. All things are the same in that it triggers our memory, but also they themselves yearn for it. So this is interesting. This brings up our thesis of there can't be a selfish and selfless. Take those words out. Why? Because selfish means selfish is bad. We're taught this. This is bullshit we're taught at school. We're in our culture. Self-ish. Ish. So wanting or having, wanting or having self goals is bad. Selfless, denying, or denying or rejecting self goals equals good, and somehow helps others. It's like sacrifice yourself for the good of king and country. Accept minimum wage so Elon Musk can have billions. That's being selfless. That's good. That's good. Don't have a union. Don't have equality of life and everybody rich. Everybody have their needs met. No. That's selfish. Having your goals met is bad. Except for the king. Hypocrisy, right? Change your mind. Because, well, if the king has his goal, if Elon Musk has his money, so it's hypocrisy, then it's not selfish. And what's interesting is, well, how do you claim that? Well, it's good that I have all the money because I'm such a genius that I help others with my Amazon. I help others with my rocket planes. I help others with whatever the hell. So I should have the power, so I help others. So I'm actually being selfish, but I'm pretending to be selfless. And you should be selfless in nature. You should pay your taxes, not me. Because I'm helping others. I'm a job creator. That's right. Trickle down economics. This is what's taught to us. And what's at the essence of it? Self-goals are bad. Denying self-goals are good. The exact opposite. The nature of the anti-logos that causes tyranny, stagnation, and prevents evolution and growth and solving problems. What is this thing saying? It's saying, hey, here are two things. All things yearn for their own self-goals, self-being, self-equal. It's a destiny for all things, even sticks. So are they being selfish? Surely it's bad for them to want to be self-equal and you for reach your ultimate self-goals, to unite with being. Why? Oh, because helping others. Actually, it's your own self-realization only comes out of your sense perception of those other things. So all things help you in the highest way, and this way all things are the same. We're all the same. Because what? We ourselves reach self-equal and we help people in the most helpful way. So this selfish, selfless dichotomy is not only objectively bullshit and harmful and anti-self, it's irrational because what we can do to help people the most is help their self-realization. And at the same time, we do so because we ourselves reach out for. Shine your light and everyone is illuminated. A rising tide lifts all ships, and so on. So, we say this points to this being. Therefore, so but contradiction, but greatest help, self-realization, is through that self-realization. What was the words? Conception and grasping. Conception and grasping happens by all things seeking, grasping, or wanting or having. Okay, let's put those two words in from above. These two words here. Wanting and having self goals. Therefore, selfish and selfless is not only the language of oppression, slavery, and the stagnation, the vice use of the words, vice logos, but is in principle incorrect. So therefore, what do? Therefore, selfish and selfless wrong, incorrect, and harmful. What were the words? Harmful, yeah. And should be replaced with, I don't know, what would you say? If you're seeking your higher self goals, what's it called when we're seeking and wanting our highest self goals? Self logos, seeking. I don't know, selfish or selfless. Hey, you're being very selfish. Oh, you're being very self-seeking, self-directed, self-logos. How about self-full? Self-full or self-logos? Yeah. All right. Interesting thing. Write that in an email. Send it to all of your educators and lawmakers and politicians in your city so that we can implement this today, please. Good job. And refer them to section 5075A of the Phaedo. Oh, and practice your dialectic if they don't understand.
Wow.
Okay. In inherent in all things we perceive, they reach out for that self. Oh, not only is it irrational, it's our nature. So another reason why selfish and selfless is incorrect is it's against our nature, which is a terrible injustice. To vilify our own nature is torture. So, let's add that. Is incorrect and harmful and against our nature. And against the nature and purpose of all things. And should be replaced with self-full or self-logos following. So yeah, add that amendment to the law that we pass if we are just lawmakers for our state and for our souls. So again, that was a little dialectic that we can do to apply to ourselves. Hey, you're seeking your highest goals. That voice comes in, don't be selfish. Do what that guy says. Be a slave to him. Do what that family member wants you to do. Get in line. You can apply what you're learning here to answer it. Engage in a dialectic. Oh, by the way, wouldn't you agree? And then do this. Oh, okay, little voice in my head. Have you ever seen self-equal? No. Have you seen 2 equal sticks? Yes. The same sticks can somebody else look at and not see self-equal? Sure. But equal itself has never been seen as unequal? No. So there's a difference between equal things and equal itself, right? But it's out of seeing that you grasp, you conceived and grasp the episteme, the kind of knowledge of self-equal, sure. Even if it was unlike equal, yeah. Like or unlike. So physical will never reach self-equal, sure. But everything wants to be a certain being, therefore, but possesses an inner deficiency, is in need, and cannot be that nature. But you wouldn't have realized it without seeing it. But it wasn't in the thing, so you must have seen it beforehand. Therefore, you must have realized must have somewhere caught sight beforehand of that which it is like, but deficiently so, self-equal. Your soul is immortal and new self-equal, allowing you to recognize it in a stick that was both like, but also unlike. And you would have only done that through that sense perception. So all things, therefore, are the same in this way. All things are benefiting you in the highest way, in that it can help you realize self-realization, self-equal and self-being in any of the selves. Applies to all things and all of the beings. So therefore all things help, and by the way, all things are also the same in this way, and all things themselves reach out, yearn for the highest goals, self-equal, right? So all things in their nature seek their highest self-goal, to be the self-equal. Sure. And it's their destiny if they awaken to the philosophy and the logos. Okay. But also, in seeking their highest self goals, they also benefit you the most, because they can awaken your own self-realization if you perceive them doing that through your senses. So, you say I'm being selfish by seeking my self-goals? That's harmful and oppressive because that's my nature and my destiny. What do you say to that? Oh yeah, but you're not helping anybody and it's better to help others. Go, because you're not as good as the king. Let's put that whether I'm not as good as the king bullshit aside, because what you really mean is serve you. You want me to be a slave to you because that's all done to you, but let's put that aside. By the way, wouldn't I help others the best if I can help them recognize that which is their purpose and destiny, their highest good? By definition, isn't that the greatest benefit I can be to others? Helping in their self-realization? By definition, yeah. And I can only do that if I am myself reaching out for, yearning for, and grasping my highest purpose and destiny and following my nature, which is my self-goals. So therefore, the whole premise that meeting your self-goals is bad and selfish because it doesn't help others is in nature the opposite of the truth. By seeking my self-goals, not only am I following my nature and being good and kind and beneficial to myself, I am also helping others in the highest way, because only through that others can see and recognize the self-equal that is like and unlike what they see in me. Unlike because the senses fall short, but like because we all seek that. And it's only through our, according to Socrates in 75a, it's only through our physical perceptions that we can go through that process of recollecting, of recognizing, conceiving, and grasping the episteme of that which we attempt to realize. So not only is selfish and selfless a harmful logos that's used to oppress through guilt, it's irrational, false, against our nature, and in principle the opposite of the truth. By seeking our highest goals, our self-goals, we also function in the most beneficial way to others. So primarily, it shouldn't matter. Seeking our highest goals for ourselves is why we're here. It's a secondary effect to be a benefit to others. But even in the secondary effect which you're using to try and get me to oppress my own self so I can serve you, king, even if it's the family king or whatever, even if that's true, the premise is fundamentally false. Therefore, selfish and selfless is bullshit, irrational, against nature and purpose, torturous, harmful, and the vice version of the self-logos, the anti-logos. Should be replaced with you are self-full, or you're self-empty and you should become full, or you're following the self-logos. So whenever you get that voice when you're pursuing your self-goals, hey, don't do philosophy, help somebody else. You can practice that dialectic that comes out of this. So you can benefit yourself, you can silence and purify that voice, but also you're practicing the dialectic, which is great too. So good for you. Balloons. No, fireworks. Okay. Okay, accordingly then, before we began to see, hear, and perceive all things, we must have somewhere happened to encounter by grasping the episteme of the self-equal. Okay. Episteme is interesting because if he's talking about the experience out of body, that might elevate the idea of episteme to be more like nous, which in some way is, if we are to refer out of our sense perceptions of equal things to that, and not realize on the one hand, all of them are eager. Okay, here we go. So he's adding more of the life. There's a life in all physical things, even sticks. Because they have to, because they have will of some kind. There has an eagerness, a desire. He must have somehow grasped knowledge of the self-equal. Let's add that to our line. So we have a conclusion about all things having a purpose to help us in that way, but also a self-purpose, yearning and reaching. Therefore, before we see, hear, and perceive, therefore, before seeing, hearing, perceiving, somewhere. So time and place. Interesting, because our physical world is to do with time and place, right? What defines the physical universe is it has space and time. Therefore, beyond the metaphysical that we're seeking is prior and some other place. That's interesting. Somewhere we happen to encounter by grasping the knowledge of self-equal, which in some way exists, if we are to refer out of our perceptions of equal things that and not realize, on the one hand, all of them realize. God, that's a long sentence. All of them are eager to be, okay? Somewhere self-equal, perceive somewhere, and encounter and grasp. Encounter and grasp knowledge of self-equal. That exists. So that's the being, has an immortal, eternal existence that exists. And all things are eager to be of that nature. And not realize that all things are eager to be of that nature. But not. So we realize, we grasp that, but still not realize all things are eager to be that nature, but are inferior to self. Okay. So there's our little conclusion there. So what's he saying? Well, even if we haven't realized this, that all things are eager to reach the destiny of all things, self-equal, which is existence. So we could also say self-being. Self-equal, of course, as we saw earlier, all of the selves. Self-equal, self-justice, self-beauty, whatever. We all seek them. All things are eager, but are inferior. What's interesting is we don't even realize that. Somehow we come into this world and we can recognize equal. 2 sticks, equal. All things are eager. Likewise, beauty. We can all recognize beautiful things, even without realizing that all things are equal to be the nature of beauty itself. But so long as they stay physical, they are inferior. And of course, if they remain physical, they have the potential to add fuel to their pseudo virtues and become vice and be harmful and hurtful, useless and harmful if they stay that way. So therefore, we must have seen, without even realizing, we haven't even been told, we haven't even seen this yet, that all things seek that nature but are inferior. But even without seeing this, we can somehow grasp the knowledge of beauty. So it's not through learning this that we recognize beauty and equal. We somehow intuitively recognize it. No one told us that all things seek beauty itself, equal itself, being itself, self-ousia. I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone through this with anybody yet. No one at the pub is talking about this. But I have seen beautiful things. I can recognize equal sticks. Therefore, Socrates concludes, we must have, before we saw, we heard, and before we perceived with our senses, somewhere, not through learning, but through grasping the knowledge of self-equal that exists. Meaning wherever our soul was before we were here, we're in some place where we could grasp being itself that exists, in which is self-equal and self-beauty. Necessarily so. Wow, what do you say?
Wow. 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 Wow.
The whole family of Owen Wilsons are in shock.
Wow. Wow.
All of them, hear them. Makes sense. To convince you that therefore your soul must be immortal, there must be somewhere before you were born, that was some other place that's prior to seeing, hearing, and thinking, prior to the physics, metaphysics. And in that experience, you were somehow grasping or encountering the direct experience of self-equal that is in being. Does it convince you? Because you haven't even, might be the first time that you have gone through the dialectic and the logos to be shown that all things are eager to seek that nature, but are inferior. So you didn't, oh, that's beauty. I know that because I was told or I learned that all things seek self-equal. That's why there must be equal. It wasn't through learning, it wasn't through understanding. Therefore, it must be through some sort of recognition. Remembering. But then we can add the logos, add the learning onto our recognition to nail it down, to make conclusions about the world, to have a way of answering that vice voice, the vice voice in our head that tells us bad things. Like it's use the language, the anti-logos language of selfish and selfless. That's bollocks. So it benefits to have both the logos and the recognition. Also, having the logos and dialectic can help us remember even better. Because why? Because we all reach out for and yearn for that which we are physically inferior to by being in the world of becoming. Because all things includes you and me. Both of us, you and me. So, having the learning and having the experience both together. A and B. So let's see what else follows here. Accordingly then, it is reasonable we have necessarily grasped self-knowledge before we were born. Okay, so he went from the particular self to self-knowledge. So whatever we learnt self-equal from is in self-knowledge. So here we have as a conclusion, necessarily. Therefore, so it has to follow, so there's the therefore. So this is how we change our mind. It has to follow the reasoning, therefore, and also has to be necessary. Therefore, Net. Necessary. Where is the word necessarily? Necessarily. A-R-I-L-Y. Necessarily. Grasped. Self-knowledge. Self-knowledge before we are born. Before we were born. Yay. It is reasonable, says Simmias. Is it not the case then that if on the one hand, having grasped self-knowledge before our birth, by having been born with it, we knew both before being born and after having been born, not only the equal and the greater and the less, but also all such beings? So he's tying equal, greater, and less to a class of self terms. But all such beings, for our present logos is not any more about the equal than the beauty of itself, of self-beauty, and the good self, and the just, and the holy, and all of those beings, which we stamp the seal, no, thumbs down for that. Stop the steal, thumbs down. We stamp the steel that which absolutely is, both when we are asking questions and answering questions. So this applies to equal, and also its group, greater and lesser, but all such beings, everything that is, but also he's saying we are using them as our paradigm in asking questions and answering questions. So not only do we seek them in ourselves, but we use these beings in our questions and answers, which goes back to what CB said, that when Simmias says, hey, can you give me an example of why learning is remembering? He said, yeah, if you've ever seen a dialectic, someone who asks questions and judges answers well pulls out the logos and knowledge from other people. And Socrates is saying, this is what we use. When we ask questions and answer questions, what we're asking about is the beings. So we see here him saying, hey, the dialectic is of the beings. And we use it. So get there. So this might be to do with the upgrade. Like we have the virtues because we desire, have courage for, have wisdom towards, has the use of injustice. These 4 virtues we put into our soul. Is for that first part of why we say self-full instead of selfish. Because we want it for ourselves. And then afterwards, to best help others, the use of the dialectic in the wild, in conversation, ask questions about it. So this is the help yourself and also help others. Win-win. It's not a zero-sum game. It's not a competitive game like lovers of the body try and convince us the world is. So we say, hey, it's what we want, but also what we use in our questions or answers. What's called using question and answers? Well, I don't hear questions and answers in debate, in fighting, even political debates. Why do we have political debates? We should have political dialectics, asking questions and answering questions about the things to which we stamp the seal, that which absolutely is. That's the dialectic. So tune in next week for the presidential dialectic, where we ask questions and judge answers based on that which absolutely is. Because all things seek it, all things reach out for it, and it's our purpose to reach it. Channel 4 tomorrow. Simmias agrees. Socrates continues, and if on the one hand, in each case we have indeed grasped and not forgotten, then we must always be born knowing and having knowledge throughout our life. For to know this is to maintain a grasp of knowledge and not to lose it. Or do we not call the losing of knowledge forgetting? Most certainly, without a doubt, says Simmias. But if, on the one hand, I suspect having indeed grasped it before birth, we lose it at birth. Okay, so what's happening here? So now that we've come to this conclusion, both for a particular, and we've extended it. So his particular was sticks. Our own personal particular we were using ourselves because we create our own example alongside to have fun and play too, was beauty. So not just equal and greater and lesser, but all such beings, including beauty. So we got a kind of validation through the logos that what we were doing was all right because we were picking beauty here. We could have picked goodness, we could have picked justice, we could have picked holiness, which is a curious one because the gods also want this thing. But all of the beings. And we use it in asking questions and answers, sure. So what? Well, also let's keep going. And so now what Socrates is doing is called a steelman argument. So Socrates is going on and he's saying, well, here are the alternatives that you could be thinking. Well, maybe we didn't learn it. Okay, so we're remembering it in our life, but maybe we remembered it when we were born. So he's saying, hey, not only must we have known it at some stage before we were born, but we necessarily had forgotten it because that which we call learning is the recovery of innate knowledge. So what he's doing now is, so in a debate, you try, often con artists who like to use debate to prove their opinions, do something called a straw man argument. They take the argument they're trying to break down and they present it in the weakest possible way, like a straw man. So they can beat it down quickly and win the debate. Yay. But what Socrates is doing is the opposite. He is now going through all of the arguments that Simmias could, the objections that he could have raised. So he's like presenting Simmias's side in a good way, a steel man. By the way, here are the objections you could have, and let's address them fairly. Why? He's not interested in winning, he's interested in truth. That's the difference. That's the essence of this whole thing. Are you interested in winning, or are you interested in truth? That's it. That's the game. That's humanity. Are we interested in winning, which involves competition, zero-sum games, trying to convince people that if they have their needs, it's bad, that's selfish, because you want because it's a bullshit lie so you can steal the resources for yourself? Winning, competitive, or truth, cooperative? Togetherness, unifying, open to all. Debate versus dialectic. So simple. Anti-logos versus the self-logos. Vice versus virtue. The stagnant ousia of the negative, of the shadow dialectic, or the uplifting anagogic ousia of the self-dialectic. The vice phronesis or pure self-phronesis. One or the other. That's the game. That's the game we're in as a species, and the only way to our next level is to reawaken a philosophy, reawaken the logos. I say reawaken now because we know the logos at some level. We were there at some time. We have an innate self-knowledge. And as CB said, we know the logos at some level. If we don't, we won't recognize. If we don't know the truth, we won't recognize its shadow. Imagine seeing a big scary monster on the ground and you can't defeat it as much as you kick because it's a shadow. As much as you kick the shadow of the dragon on the floor, you can't defeat it. That's our world. We are suffering from the implications of the shadow of a big scary dragon. You can't defeat it by just attacking it. That's just more anti-logos. You need to learn the true logos within ourselves and within the world. Only then can you recognize the anti-logos. The stagnant dialectic is simply a two-dimensional or a lesser dimensional shadow and reflection and distortion of the true dialectic. You can only recognize the shadow by knowing the truth. So why is competition bad? Why is capitalism bad? Why is hypocrisy bad? Why is winning and debating bad? Easy. Because here is the real thing it's a shadow of. Dialectic, self-logos, a rational, efficient, renewable way of living, meeting all human needs collectively because we all have the same goals, providing the conditions to therefore be free to do philosophy. Evolve, solve problems and escape our problems of our fate, remove our chains as Socrates had earlier in this dialogue on his legs, remove those chains of suffering and pain and the repeating stagnant cycles of the anti-ousia and the anti-logos. Remove that, solve our problems, escape our fate internally and as a species on the planet, and use the real logos, the real dialectic, the real self-logos to do what we're trying to do it, we're reaching out to anyway. Fulfill our purpose, our function, and really benefit people. Simple as that. Recognize the shadow by pointing to the truth. And address the shadow so that we can all seek the truth. That's the game. That's why we're here. I hope you're having fun. I hope you see the significance of it. If you think other people might be interested in this game and enjoy these podcasts, please share it around with them if you think they'll like it. And next time we're going to go back into this argument and see more of how it plans out. But so far, we've already seen a lot in this argument. The conclusion: necessarily, we have grasped self-knowledge before we were born. That's the conclusion. So that's been a lot of fun. And I hope you've enjoyed going back over the implications as well as the argument, because it's both. It's not just logical, it's human. It's the two. The understanding and the state of mind. The dianoia and the nous. The self-logos and dialectic, and the grasping of self-ousia. So, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed not only learning it, but also applying it to our world, our lives, ourselves, making it human. If you have, I'm grateful and thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Take care.